Good evening, and thank you so much tonight for taking time out of your evening to attend and participate in tonight's meeting. I'm going to go ahead and get us started. My name is Josh Travers. I'm the Assistant Field Manager for the Red Rock Sloan Field Office. I'm so excited to be here tonight to share with all of you Red Rock Canyon's step forward in managing the Harris Spring planning area, just one of several large-scale planning efforts Red Rock Canyon has initiated. Thank you for giving your attention tonight, offering your active participation, expertise, and experience, which is incredibly important to making this planning effort a success, and it will improve the BLM's ability to deliver a well-developed recreation area management plan that supports your interest and care for such a spectacular area within the Red Rock Canyon National Conservation Area. Next slide. Oh, sorry, this slide is where we need to be. Go ahead and stay here, Teresa, just for a second. So our agenda for tonight will begin with an introduction and a few opening remarks, followed by our outdoor recreation planner, John Prescott, who will lead us through an introduction to the project and the participation we need from you to ensure this project is successful. We'll then provide time for you to ask questions. We'll respond in a virtual question and answer panel where both John and I will answer your questions verbally, but we'll also have with us an incredible resource, or a team of resource experts in the background that's going to assist with answering questions for those who wish to ask through the question and answer tool in this Zoom meeting. We'll spend the final hour of this meeting giving you time to share with us comments and information you feel are pertinent to how the BLM establishes management direction for managing our resources and the recreation that occurs within this planning area. Also, please remember and share with others who are interested in making comments that they have that there's an open period for people to make comments, and throughout this meeting we will share an email address where those comments can be made. The individuals we have with us tonight supporting this event are, and next slide please. Josh Travers, myself, John Prescott, who will lead us through the presentation. We've got our facilitators of the Zoom meeting, William Penner and Teresa Ansel with EMPSI. For our interdisciplinary team and other participants, I have Field Manager Katrina Williams, Project Manager Sheeter Rakestraw, John Asselin with Public Affairs, Boris Poff, the NCA Manager for Red Rock Canyon, Peter Gower with MC, Noel Crawley with MC, and Annette Newbert, our archaeologist, and outdoor recreation planner Shelby Johnson. Next slide. So the purpose of this project is to take a step-down approach from our overarching resource management plan, and what this recreation area management plan will do is establish the vision, objectives, and goals that will provide site-specific direction for on-the-ground implementation of our resource management plan, but the things that we build into this recreation area management plan that includes specific recreation permitting or use allocation decisions, addresses the administration of the area, how we're going to provide information and education to the public, and the monitoring needs that support the management direction that we establish for this area. It could include things such as trail maintenance, improved facilities, such as restrooms and parking areas, or other infrastructure that we may need to support recreation that occurs in the area. This meeting kicks off a 30-day information gathering period where we are collecting information from the public to support the development of this plan. And your comments and input will be used to develop that plan. We'll draft a preliminary plan using your input, and we'll put, once we have a draft completed, we will again release that out to the public for a final round of public commenting, where we will then produce a final plan that will establish the final direction for how the BLM will manage the Harris Spring area. Next slide. And then I'll end my introduction with some information for those who are less familiar with Red Rock Canyon National Conservation Area. The NCA or National Conservation Area is approximately 201,000 acres managed by the Bureau of Land Management and is part of the National Conservation Land System. Because of our popularity, many think of Red Rock Canyon not as a national conservation area, but that of a national park, or perhaps a large urban park. It's important to remember that we're not a national park, and the difference between a national park and a national conservation area is our legislation requires that we conserve, protect, and enhance the area that we're managing for the benefit and enjoyment of present and future generations, but resource protection lives at our highest priority, followed by the need to provide and manage for recreational access, activities, and experiences. So with our designation as an NCA, we have a resource management plan that provides Red Rock management high-level direction for managing the national conservation area. And Congress called for providing recreation opportunities that allow the public to enjoy and appreciate the unique natural setting, but provided primary direction to conserve and protect our natural and cultural resources that make up the NCA as our highest priority. So along with our close approximation to Las Vegas and our growing population, we consistently hold strong every year in the top 5 best things to do in Las Vegas on Yelp. We exist as a world-class destination for climbing and bouldering, and we are a national destination for many activities, including hiking, scenic viewing, equestrian riding, mountain biking, canyoneering, climbing, bouldering, and the list goes on as technology and recreation advances continue to come at us. Prior to 2016, Red Rock Canyon was visited by less than 2 million visitors per year. By 2018, we broke 2 million. We hit 3.5 million visitors in 2019. And since the pandemic, we've plateaued at around 3.2 million visitors. With that said, we are this year we're trending. We're moving back towards our trend where we're still anticipating 4 million visitors by the end of 2022 and 5 million visitors by 2024. A tremendous amount of growth. So although recreation management plays a very important and critical role in our everyday operations, please remember that as we develop these recreation area management plans and we determine how we're going to manage recreation in the different areas of the NCA, our highest priority falls to resource protection for both cultural and natural resources. And that lives as our highest mandate in any decisions that we make. So with that shared, I'm gonna pass the presentation over to John Prescott, who's going to lead us through what this project is.
Hello, like Josh said, my name is John Prescott. I'm a recreation planner at Red Rock Canyon National Conservation Area. and I'm the project lead for this Harris Springs ramp and EA. Teresa, can we go back to the last slide, please? Teresa, can we go to the last slide? Thank you. So the Harris Springs project area overview is shown here. The project area is highlighted in orange on this map. The green hash marks show the greater Red Rock Canyon NCA, and the blue hash marks show the La Madre Mountain Wilderness. So the specific area that we're looking at in this project is 4,639 acres within that orange polygon that you see there. The northern boundary is Highway 157 or Kyle Canyon Road. The southern boundary is the La Madre Mountain Wilderness area, and the western boundary abuts the Forest Service managed land in the Spring Mountain National Recreation Area. Next slide, please. So there it is. This area is really a gateway from North Las Vegas into the Spring Mountain recreation area on the Forest Service land, leading to outstanding backcountry recreation opportunities in Mount Charleston and Griffith Peak. It's also a vital watershed, or part of a vital watershed that drains the Mount Charleston area and the La Madre Mountains into Northwest Las Vegas. This area sees a lot of OHV use, backcountry hiking, mountain biking, and equestrian use. The fact that it is a vital watershed leads into part of why we are looking to manage this area in a more proactive way. Next slide, please. In 2013, the Carpenter One fire burned a huge area up in the Spring Mountain National Recreation Area and into this Harris Springs planning area that we're looking at now. As a result of that fire, there was some heavy post-fire flooding, and the BLM instituted a 5-year closure to protect public health and safety and to help encourage post-fire recovery of the ecosystem. During that time, there was quite a bit of unauthorized motorized trespassing up in the Harris Springs zone. And because of that, a lot of the unauthorized roads developed as a result of the flooding, actually. The Harris Springs Road itself was impassable, and a lot of traffic was trying to bypass the blocked wash and going around. But that's not to say that unauthorized roads and trails haven't been being developed in this area for quite a long time. Next slide, please. So the BLM and the Forest Service initiated a joint restoration project through the Southern Nevada Public Lands Management Act. During this initial restoration effort, the BLM realized that recreation was really happening unmanaged and needed to be addressed in order for restoration efforts to be fully successful, which is leading to this ramp, development of this ramp. Both this portion of the Southern Nevada Public Lands Management Act restoration project and the initial landscape restoration efforts are largely focused on restoring this area from the Carpenter One fire. Next slide, please. So our portion of this project requires that the BLM execute several tasks and deliverables. Most importantly, for our purposes tonight, task number 3 is improving the recreational experience in the Harris Springs watershed. The project requires us to delineate authorized motorized routes, trails, and primary concentrated use areas. We're also looking to monitor authorized routes and trails and their use, and to rehabilitate some of the unauthorized road disturbance that's gone on in this area after the post Carpenter 1 fire and before the Carpenter 1 fire. Next slide, please. So why are we developing this ramp? Largely to respond to that task 3 that was shown in the previous slide, requirement for the SNPLMA project. This plan is going to establish the vision, goals, and objectives for a long-term recreation management of Harris Springs. This plan will also balance post-fire ecological recovery with recreational use in the Harris Springs area. And this plan will also establish long-term monitoring of the Harris Springs area. Thank you, Teresa. As Las Vegas continues to develop and grow, and visitation to this area continues to put increasing pressure on the resources up there. Next slide, please. So the components of this plan will include specific route designations, including motorized and non-motorized uses. It'll establish specific recreation strategies for managing these recreation uses. It will also prescribe specific restoration approaches for restoring some of the unauthorized roads and trails that have developed in the area, including addressing some of the fire damage and post-fire recovery. This plan will set in place a signage and education plan to inform the public visiting Harris Springs of what appropriate recreation uses are in the area. And it will lastly set in place a monitoring schedule to basically able to monitor the success of the restoration efforts and the recreation strategies that we're enacting through this plan. Next slide, please. Here's a little more detailed map of the project area. You can see it highlighted in a faint bluish gray. The Red Rock Canyon resource management plan that Josh referenced in the introduction designates certain routes as open to motorized use, and these are shown in green within the project area. Our RMP also designates certain routes to be closed to motorized use and restored to a natural state, and these ones are shown in blue. It's important to note that some of the routes, or the routes designated for closure, are in various states of condition. Some of them are very lightly used and are restoring themselves to a natural state. Some of them show heavy use but are in good condition, or they're sustainable. And some of them show heavy use but are in poor condition and are showing severe signs of erosion and other resource damage. You can see also that some of the roads that are designated for closure per the resource management plan connect directly to authorized roads in the Forest Service. That is one of the issues that we will also be considering in this plan is ensuring connectivity to other authorized uses in the area. There is an interactive map. This map is available in an interactive form on the EMPSI website, which we will display later on in this presentation for you all to visit at your leisure. One last thing I'd like to point out is that there are at least two and likely 3 motor vehicle incursions into the La Madre Mountain Wilderness as a result of some of this unmanaged recreation there, and the other one there. So several issues that we'll be considering with regard to closing these routes or leaving them open. Next slide, please. So the preliminary issues that we're looking to identify in this ramp, again, address the deliverables in the SNPLMA project. So we will be identifying an appropriate travel network of roads that will be open or closed, and to which uses, either motorized or non-motorized, and deciding which routes will remain open and to which uses is going to be based on their utility within the overall system. If they lead to an important place, such as a scenic overlook, or provide connectivity to the Forest Service, motor vehicle routes. If the roads and trails themselves are redundant, like you can see in the photo shown on this slide, and how sustainable the routes themselves are, what impacts we're seeing to other resources, and what issues we're seeing as a result of erosion from some of these routes. Next slide, please. We're going to be looking at some landscape restoration tactics and techniques. Some of these techniques include physical barriers at the closed road entries. Physical barriers can include boulders, post and cable fences, even buried fence posts to act as bollards, preventing vehicle incursions. We'll be looking at revegetating some of the disturbance, either with seeding or live planting. And we'll also be looking to employ a tactic called vertical mulching, where restoration crews collect dead and down material, native material from around the project site, and mask the route that's going to be closed or restored. So there will be a combination of any of these techniques used on any one restoration area, but it's situationally dependent based on the level of disturbance that we're looking to restore. Next slide, please. Lastly, the big preliminary issue that we're looking at is how to proactively manage the expanding growth of Las Vegas, and particularly in the Sky Canyon area at the base of US 95 and Highway 157. Rough estimates that we've heard are that we can expect up to 60,000 new residents immediately adjacent to this part of the National Conservation Area and the Harris Springs project zone. And part of evaluating appropriate uses and access to this area is going to include looking at non-motorized interests and potential trail connectivity from this area of Las Vegas to the NCA, with the overall goal of, again, being proactive and showing people where they can recreate rather than having to chase after folks and do restoration like we're doing now. Next slide, please. The overall timeline for this project is shown here. We are currently in the public information gathering stage. This winter, we'll be preparing the draft recreation area management plan and environmental assessment. Importantly, for all the attendees on this call, in January, we'd be looking to release that draft ramp and EA to the public for a 30-day comment period, after which, again, we'll be modifying that plan and making final amendments to it based on those comments, re-releasing to the public for comment again, and then looking to begin implementation of these restoration activities in spring 2022 to spring 2023. That's all I have.
Hey, good evening. My name is William Penner. I'm with EMPSI, and I'm going to help facilitate the latter stages of this virtual public meeting this evening. And I'm going to set up a question and answer session that will be interactive with the BLM. And there's a couple different ways that you can go ahead and ask a question and get an answer from the BLM and the ID team. Principally, if you want to type something, you can go ahead, click the Q&A screen or button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. You can go ahead and type your question there. The BLM ID team will either go ahead and respond verbally. So Josh will go ahead and provide a response to that by speaking in the meeting, or they will go ahead and actually type an answer to your question. And then once that is completed, it will go ahead and move off of and go into the answered questions You can further, if you feel comfortable or, excuse me, if you feel uncomfortable and you want to ask a question anonymously, you can go ahead and click in the lower left and select that option. The example to the right is one of the examples of what will happen if the BLM ID team is going to go ahead and respond using the Zoom Q&A function and answer it live. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Josh and go ahead and ask him to come on camera and encourage everyone to go ahead and ask questions.
Yeah, and so I'm John and I are both available to answer any questions that you have. So we'll start monitoring the question and answer area, and please raise your hand if you would like to ask a question.
Josh, I know we only have 5 attendees at the moment. Actually just dropped to 4. Are there any questions that weren't addressed by going through that presentation that you might want to go ahead and elaborate on right now?
John, do you want to?
Yeah.
Do you want to take that?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, Teresa, would you mind going back to the second map slide? I think it would be slide. Yes, that one. So again, one of the issues that we need to consider in developing this ramp is connectivity to other areas outside of the NCA and within the NCA. It's come to our attention that there is a major OHV staging area at the base of Highway 157 and US 95 that on the weekends is typically crowded with UTV trailers, and anecdotal reports of the folks staging there at a park and ride, driving up the main Harris Springs wash, and then dispersing to various areas of the NCA and into the Forest Service from the wash. So one of the things that we're going to be considering is how to manage that use. And we'd love to hear comments on, resources that we might not be aware of in the area. Other uses, if OHV staging there and driving up the wash is interfering with either private landowners or other recreation use in that wash and in the area. But again, that whole connectivity thing, as the suburbs continue to encroach onto the Red Rock boundary, really we're keeping in mind what kinds of use we might see from these new residents and how they might be accessing not only Harris Springs, but the greater Red Rock Canyon NCA from their backyards.
John, I'm going to jump in, and that was actually a great sort of self-question and answer. Remind everyone, you can go ahead and use the QA function at the bottom of your screen, type a question there. You can do it anonymously. And then the BLM will either answer it within that function, or go ahead and answer it live. But for you, John, I wanted maybe to ask you a question. What's the nature of the private in-holdings in the project out there?
So yeah, you can see in the middle of the project area, there is an island of private land there. And it's an old mine and has some private residents living within it. That road, that green highlighted road that goes right through the middle, as I mentioned earlier, our resource management plan designated as being open. And largely it is to provide access to those private residents within the area, those private land areas. But it is open to the public. There aren't any gates or any blockages like that. So it is a publicly used road.
I'm going to keep serving up some questions. Again, those who want to ask any more questions, you can use the Q&A function. But could you go back and maybe actually just generally characterize, we sort of flew past some of the pictures about the area. Just talk about the vegetation, the setting a little bit more.
Okay. Let's see. Yeah, so yeah, there's a good overview of some of the burn scar of the Carpenter 1 fire. I believe this photo was taken from higher up in the Harris Springs watershed. But you can see there are some taller trees. There are some larger pine trees, ponderosa pine trees. In the BLM managed Harris Springs ramp area, it's mostly a patchwork of pinyon juniper, some creosote, and some sage. So lower brush. Importantly, there is a lot of black brush as well, which is important to I guess prevent from burning, because it does take a very long time to reestablish. So the overall landscape within our project area is a patchwork of various types of vegetation, transitioning from kind of lower Mojave to not quite alpine, but higher elevation forests, rolling hills, bisected by minor drainages, all leading down into the main Harris Wash drainage.
John, you had mentioned that as you went sort of uphill and to the west, that you got into the Forest Service lands. What are you guys doing to actually coordinate with the forest for this project?
We met up with the Forest Service, a few Forest Service representatives several weeks ago, and actually drove around the area and looked at where the designated Forest Service routes connect to the routes within the Harris Springs Wash, or our Harris Springs project area. Again, there is some discrepancy between what our RMP designates to be closed and what the Forest Service has designated as open. So we have an open discussion between BLM and Forest Service about how to manage that disconnect. On our side, we are dedicated to keeping a connected loop and recreation opportunity between Red Rock and the Forest Service, so there aren't any obscure dead ends within the entire system.
So minor point of clarification for me, the forest already did travel management and designated those roads up there. So you guys are now doing it on your side.
Correct, yeah.
Excellent. So one question that I also had about that, the Forest Service and the BLM were also working together as part of the STIPLA mode requirements. You know, what was the sort of the timeline and some of the components of SNPLMA that maybe you didn't touch on before in that slide?
I'll let Josh Travers speak to that a little bit more in detail.
Sorry for the transition there. It looks like we just have a floating head that just passes by. We got to keep it fun, right? No, a great question. You know, as you saw on the schedule that John provided, this project is moving pretty quickly for the scale of management that we're developing and looking at bringing to implementation. The driver behind that is that we've got special legislation dollars tied behind this that put us on a clock, that we're really restricted in time to complete this project pretty quickly, so that we don't lose that special legislation dollars that's supporting not only the planning work that we're doing, but also the implementation work. And for us to stay in that schedule, it requires that we move this recreation area management plan quickly through the process, and so that we can move right into an implementation of doing some restoration that supports the work that's addressing some of the issues that came from that Carpenter 1 fire. I also wanted to add a couple points. We've referenced that we have this overarching management direction plan that we call the resource management plan, and we take these site-specific step-down approaches from that in providing direction to areas so that we have further direction in how we're going to manage to protect our resources, but also manage recreation that occurs within these areas. These projects for Red Rock Canyon are so important because of the explosion in growth in visitation that we've received, not only from 2016 to 2000 or to now to present, but we also now acknowledge that the growth isn't going to stop here. We're trending upward. We're going to continue to trend upward, and we need to ensure that we're managing for that area. And so we're using a recreation area management planning tool so that not only can we address the issues for the need for restoration, but we want to ensure that we're also, we recognize that recreation is happening in this area, and there's a need for us to manage recreation, allow the opportunities and activities to exist in this area, but we need to also look ahead for all of those people who have not come to Red Rock yet, that we know will be coming to Red Rock. And so we're going to be looking at this area to address the issues, but also we want to hear what is the interest for recreation in this area regarding mountain bike use, equestrian use, climbing, bouldering, all of the things that people love about Red Rock Canyon. How can we support the growing demand in recreation? And we, there's several needs that we need to address. The demand that's coming, but also the demand and pressure that's getting put on to what we call the core area of Red Rock Canyon. And it's in our best interest to ensure that we're planning and building opportunities that's outside of the core area so that we can relieve some of the pressure from that area and offer opportunities throughout Red Rock Canyon to increase recreation. And so what we really want to hear from the public is what kind of opportunities would you like to see in this area? How can we support the communities that are not only here now, but the communities that are coming at us, and we'll be using this area and looking at this area for recreational opportunities.
That's excellent, Josh. I wanted to go ahead and go back and remind people of how they can ask questions by using the Q&A function down at the bottom of your screen in Zoom, but also invite the caller that we have on the phone, if they would like to go ahead and raise their hand and ask a question by the phone. You can go ahead and hit *9. Once you do that, I can then unmute you and allow you to ask your question. I'll put you back on mute and then afford the BLM the opportunity to do that. I just want to make sure we're incorporating, people are participating in every means.
Thanks, William. And I do want to also share that, in being a good neighbor, we're working very closely with the Kyle Canyon community. We made an attempt last night to reach out to the community through an advisory committee meeting. We're also working with our neighbor on the other side, the Forest Service. John talked about that a little bit, but we want to ensure the decisions that the Forest Service has made, that blends well as you cross the imaginary boundary line of Red Rock Canyon from the forest, that we're supporting some of the decisions they made. And so we're going to be looking at all of that and how we can ensure that there is a sustainable transportation system and use recreation use system to support the demands.
Josh, I realized I actually, in trying to single out the phone caller, I also didn't offer that same option to the folks who are attending by Zoom. If you'd like to raise your hand in Zoom, down at the bottom of your screen, there is a raise hand button. You can also go ahead and do that and ask questions of the BLM in that fashion as well. Excellent. Thank you for going back to that slide. Josh, I know we're going to get to this later. Could you go ahead and just sort of remind people of what the overall project schedule is for this, both for the early planning and public engagement component, as well as when we think the draft ramp EA might be coming out?
Yeah, we're as we move through this process, we're asking for information to feed into this. There's going to be a 30-day a commenting period, and then we're going to work through the winter. Yep, thank you. We're going to work through the winter in developing a draft ramp and environmental assessment, and we expect to release that in January for the public to review, make additional comments on, where we'll then produce a final recreation area management plan in March.
Excellent. That tees me up to go ahead and remind everyone what the schedule is for this meeting. We were going to go ahead and wait until 8 o'clock and allow people to go ahead and provide verbal comments. We also wanted to go ahead and leave enough time for the question and answer period. So we'll go ahead and wait for just a little bit longer before we move into the public comment period. But I also want to remind everyone, if you could go forward just 1 or 2 slides.
William, I think you said 8 o'clock comments. I think we need to.
Oh, I'm sorry. I meant 7 o'clock. It's 8 o'clock in the time zone that I am in. So I apologize for my looking at the clock and not doing the mental math backwards. Teresa, do you mind going forward just a second? Actually, back one. There we go. Whoops. You overshot it. There we go. I just wanted to go ahead and mention, we've talked about it before, that there is more information that's available at the website for this project, which is virtualpublicmeeting.com/Harris Springs ramp-home. And we'll go ahead and look at that in a little bit, but that has information on the schedule. So what Josh was just describing, it has information on the 30-day comment period for this early planning. It has information on the other ways that you can go ahead and actually provide comments. And it further has some of sort of the 5 most asked questions on there. So there's a lot of information and a lot that you can learn by visiting there. And further, you can go ahead and for people who weren't able to attend this evening, they can go ahead and go there and get some flavor of what's going on. So Josh, I'll allow you to go ahead and talk some more about questions again.
Yeah, and then just to dive a little bit, this is now we're not working on our first recreation area management plan, but I'll share that as we go to develop these plans, some of the things that we consider, and this is all what helped us build previous recreation area management plans is the feedback that we get from the public, and we want to hear what those wants and needs are. But I want to remind people that some of the feedback that has really helped us is the need for facilities like additional parking. Is there a need for to support equestrian use in the area, and what types of facilities or things would you like to see so that we can support that kind of recreation activities? We also have considered parking areas in some of the work that we've done in these planning areas.
I'm actually going to go ahead and ask a question about parking, and then follow up with a question about wilderness area and roads. Did the RMP for Red Rock Canyon NCA mention anything about parking in this area of the project?
Yeah, our resource management plan did provide beyond direction to that we should consider a equestrian parking area off of Kyle Canyon Road, and that's certainly something that we want to continue to consider. And as we do that, we also want to make sure that we hear from the other recreational interest groups, so that when we go to look at things like that, that we can ensure that we're supporting the management of all opportunities that that we can manage in this area.
Excellent. My follow-up question actually may be for John, or it could be for you, Josh. You had mentioned that there are roads that are encroaching into the wilderness. Look like some short spur roads. Could you just go ahead and talk about those a little bit?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. So we've got a couple roads that are going into the La Madre Mountain wilderness, and if you're not familiar with wilderness, there's the with the congressional designation of wilderness, our mandate is to manage those areas to a non-impairment standard, where we can't allow for changes to the natural landscape of a designated wilderness area that's made by human cause, and we need to ensure that we look at that area, consider what's happening, and look at how we can ensure that we're managing for that to that non-impairment standard.
So if roads are not an allowable use, what are the allowable uses in wilderness?
It's non-motorized, non-mechanical uses that are really sorry, you caught me off guard with that question. It was a great question. I'm just trying to frame my answer correctly. Wilderness can get complicated, but it really is to where we have to manage it to a non-impairment standard. So when we're looking at wilderness, we have to ensure that when you enter a wilderness, that we're managing for where people can find an area of solitude, where you're not going to see noticeable changes through recreational use, where it's a very wild and untouched area, and we need to ensure that those areas are continue to be managed for that type of use. And it's for Red Rock Canyon. We have the La Madre Mountain Wilderness, which resides with very easy access into that area. That's very close to a very large population. So there's a lot of challenges that come with trying to manage a landscape to that non-impairment standard.
So you had mentioned a significant amount of equestrian use as you were talking to the residents the other evening. Equestrian use is one of the activities that is considered appropriate in wilderness.
Yes. Yep. Yep.
So I actually had one question about ramps. Well, there's lots of different types of recreation area management plans. How would the ramp address the wildfire restoration? So how would that be wrapped in? And maybe that's a question for John more than you. I don't know.
Well, John talked about the restoration of the roads that have been created in an area where we need to ensure that we're protecting an area that's getting a lot of erosion and a lot of impacts from the fire and unauthorized recreation uses that's occurring in the area. The mix of both of those things, there's a tremendous amount of impacts that's coming from that. And so we're going to be doing a number of restoration strategies that John mentioned earlier in his presentation that's going to address that. And it really depends on the road or the route, and if it's almost already self-restored, that there will be a less dramatic restoration effort, where if we have to address roads and routes that are heavily used, heavily disturbed areas, it'll be a much more substantial restoration effort that we do in that area. Would you like to add anything to that, John?
Sure.
Yeah. I'm going to let John add a little bit more to that question.
Great, thank you.
As I slide over.
So specific fire restoration management tactics in the Harris Springs area right now haven't been clearly defined yet. We're going to be looking into that as we delve deeper into the environmental assessment and the specific needs for this area. Probably tangentially though, an indirect management fire tactic is going to be try to get a handle on some of the unauthorized roads and trails that are occurring. The fewer opportunities there are for a spark to kick up, the less chance there is for a damaging fire to occur. So through travel management, also through trying to manage dispersed camping, showing people where they might be able to disperse camp, and maybe setting aside specific safe zones that are a little more fire resistant than just going out off of a random dirt road.
Would the BLM be interested in feedback from the public about the types of restorations, or maybe different alternatives that include different types of considerations as far as restoration? Is that something that you're interested in this early planning and information gathering period?
Absolutely, absolutely. If anybody has specific experience in restoring arid landscapes, specifically, in the Mojave Desert, the more information we have, the better. If there's specific experience saying that one thing works better than another, we'd love to know that. Particularly when it comes to seeding and potentially live planting, if we're considering that. But yes, any kind of restoration advice is good advice.
Excellent. I'm going to go ahead, and I see that Aaron McDermott has raised their hand, and I'm going to go ahead and allow him to talk and ask a question here. Go ahead. You're going to have to unmute yourself on your end as well.
Oh, can you hear me?
I can. Go ahead. Welcome.
Oh, okay. I'm so sorry. So we're doing Q&A, or not Q&A. I think I accidentally raised my hand. I'm getting ready for the public comment, William. So sorry.
Well, you know what? If you would like, and with the permission of the BLM, we're only 4 minutes away from that. So
Oh, okay,
if
great.
you'd like, I can go ahead and just run quick through how to provide the public comments, and then you can just stay unmuted and you can be our first public commenter.
I would love that.
Sound good to you guys?
That sounds great, William.
Okay, perfect segue, Aaron. I appreciate your accidental hand raise.
Me too. Thanks, William.
You actually, you anticipated what I was going to suggest on this slide. You need to go ahead, you press the raise hand button, either purposefully or without without intention, at the bottom of the screen. And then once your hand is called, I'm going to go ahead, open your microphone, and then you will have to probably unmute on your end. For the people who are on the phone, you can raise your hand with *9, and then I'll do the same thing. And then *6 is how you unmute. A timer usually is going to be displayed on the screen to show the time remaining for your comment. We only have 3 attendees at present. So I think we go ahead and have some flexibility with this, but I do also want to mention that your comments are going to be included in the project record. And with that, one more slide forward, if you don't mind, Teresa. So we've got a bunch of examples of substantive comments. For example, here, additional information data analysis, which could be considered as an example if you have different ways to go ahead and complete some sort of restoration there. Alternative methodologies for analysis and why those should be used. Other issues or concerns or opportunities that haven't been identified and the BLM should consider. And then really critically too, are there additional alternatives that haven't been discussed that BLM should consider? The ones that are less helpful are described below. This isn't a voting process. Agreeing or disagreeing isn't as useful unless you provide justification as to why the BLM may want to consider different data. And it doesn't propose, relate to this proposed plan area. As an example, next week, we're dealing with the Calico Basin Ramp EA. Comment submitted for the Harris Springs project about Calico Basin is not going to help us, or vague open-ended questions. So one more slide forward. And real quick, just to go ahead and just ground rules to get this out of the way. Typically speaking, we have a lot of folks who participate in these meetings. So the reason why we have time up there is so that we actually show respect to all the people who would actually like to comment. We always want to hear from everybody and allow them to participate, provide their input. So we're going to use the following guidelines. We're going to ask you to stay within your allotted time so everyone can speak. Obviously, with only 3 people, we have a greater degree of flexibility there. Really ask you be respectful of others, refrain from profanity. And if you're not following those guidelines, we may actually mute your microphone. Another key thing, and I'll come back to this several other times, if you don't want to speak, some people aren't comfortable doing that in this context, but you want to provide comments, please visit the RAMP website, virtualpublicmeeting.com/Harris-Springs-ramp-home, and you can actually go ahead and find out the ways to provide comments there. So on this one, I'm going to go ahead, Aaron, and I'm going to say, why don't you go ahead and start talking? I think it will be okay if you go over your 2 minutes, but we're doing that usually when we have lots of people and we're trying to accommodate everyone. Go ahead, Aaron. Welcome.
Perfect. And can you still hear me all right?
Absolutely. You're crystal clear.
Great. Great. So thanks to all of you for hosting this session tonight. I'm Erin McDermott, Executive Director for Friends of Red Rock Canyon. On behalf of our membership, we are pleased that this planning work for Harris Springs is happening. As the BLM embarks on the planning process for this area, we ask first and foremost that cultural and biological resources are thoroughly inventoried and considered as infrastructure and recreation options are explored. In addition, there's a huge opportunity in the Harris Springs area for more formal interpretation and education for the public and specific user groups, and an opportunity, especially we hope as the co-managers of the Red Rock Volunteer Program, that there are additional volunteer activities created when it comes to the restoration work needed for this area that was mentioned earlier this evening. Thank you.
Excellent. That was even within the time allotted. Thank you ever so much, Aaron. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and afford the opportunity to our guest who is here on the phone with the phone number ending in 954. If you'd like to raise your hand, that's *9, and then I can go ahead and unmute you. And then we have one other attendee, Brad, if you'd like to raise your hand to provide a comment, you can go ahead and do that by clicking that the button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And while we're waiting for anyone else to raise their hands, and further, Aaron, if you'd like, if we go a little ways and no one else wants to raise their hand and provide comments, you certainly can raise your hand again and we'll hear more comments from you. BLM, Aaron mentioned the idea of archaeological surveys. Could you go ahead and speak to what archaeological surveys may actually be happening as part of the project?
Yeah, I'd be glad to, William. So right now, the EMPSI contractors helping us with this project have a subcontractor out surveying 30 miles of these roads and trails within the project area for cultural resources. The results of this inventory will have a huge impact on our decisions to close and restore certain routes or leave certain routes open. So like I said, they're surveying 30 miles, including restoration buffers around each of the routes designated to be shown to be closed per the RMP. But the results of that survey should be back in the next month or two.
Excellent, thank you. Again, go ahead and encourage anyone. You can raise your hand to provide a comment. You can go ahead, and if you don't feel comfortable doing that, either by hitting *9 as someone on the phone or pressing the raised hand button at the bottom of your Zoom screen, you can also visit the website for virtualpublicmeeting.com/Harris Springs Ramp Home. And seeing as our 3 attendees are not raising their hand, I'm going to use this time to go ahead and actually share my screen and show you a little bit about what the website looks like. And we'll go ahead and come back. I'll always be actually looking to make sure if someone actually has their hand raised. Let me make sure I'm doing the right, must be this one. Okay, I don't know why that's, oh, darn it. Teresa, do you mind going ahead and pulling up the website? I have a brand new computer and it's telling me I have to go ahead and give permission to Zoom via the system preferences in order to be able to share my screen.
I will pull it up. Just 1 minute, William. It's
No problem.
pulling it up. Here we are.
I apologize. We have some time. Oh, brilliant. Thank you.
Is that okay?
That's beautiful. Thank you. Do you mind actually just zooming in just a little bit if possible? That's great. So this is a companion website to these virtual public meetings. The intent of why the BLM has developed them for the Harris Springs Ramp EA, for the Calico Basin Ramp EA, is the idea is that we want everyone to be able to actually going ahead for the opportunity to come to these virtual public meetings and attend with the most information so that they're able to ask informed questions and provide informed comments. So further, this also allows people to know when there are opportunities for public comment. It provides the information on the links you can get to attend a meeting such as this. And then further, it'll go ahead and provide you information on the comment periods and how to comment. So if you can scroll down, Teresa. Excellent. You can basically see, explains actually what the project is, gives you some visual context for actually what that looks like. It has 4 additional meeting stations. Yep, there's hyperlinks there for the comment process. There's the welcome and project introduction, the NEPA and public involvement, preliminary issues considered and frequently asked questions. That one is actually a really interesting one. And I'm going to ask John for a little bit of context on that when we get there. And then probably the key one that we're interested in is providing comments. But let's go ahead and start with station 1 and I'll walk through that one first. Excellent. So this actually provides the same kind of background that you eventually find at the beginning of the ramp EA, situates the project area sort of within the larger Red Rock Canyon NCA, actually provides some of the issues that are sort of facing the area, and then actually basically has the project description, describes what a ramp is, talks about some of these issues. Again, you can kind of see a little bit of the creosote there, and some of just the sort of the visual environment out there at Harris Springs, and talks, briefly about what concerns thus far the BLM has identified. And if you scroll down, thank you. I love your work with the cursor there. You'll see a map which you actually should notice. This was part of the presentation earlier. So we'll also get to an interactive version of this in a little bit. There's an opportunity to sign in, let us know that you visited. And then if we go on, yep, you could be added to the mailing list for the project. It's a lot of different opportunities to go ahead and let the BLM know what you think about this and to participate. This actually describes what the NEPA process is. NEPA has a lot of different flavors. This is an environmental assessment that the BLM is preparing. Kind of explains actually what do you do with an environmental assessment. And then key to this, and the reason why everyone's here, I assume, is because we're letting people know what the opportunities are for public involvement. So this is a 30-day comment period. It started November 1st. It will end on December 1st. And you can submit comments at any point within this process, but for the BLM to go ahead and consider them and the alternatives development and sort of the issues that will frame the analysis in the EA, the comments that are received before December 1st are going to be the ones that will be most effective. And here you can also note we're hosting a live moderated virtual public meeting on November 10th. We're in the middle of this. It provides you a link to register. When we go and we actually have the comment period for the draft ramp EA, this will also be a location that you can come back to and find information on that. So let's go ahead and go forward, Teresa. Excellent. So John, I'm actually going to go ahead and kick this to you. What are, we're talking about the preliminary issues for consideration. Why are we talking about issues here, and how does that help the BLM?
Well, talking about the issues out up front helps us formulate a management plan. Really, if we need to understand what the base level of use is in the area and what specifically what we need to be addressing in order to make an informed decision on how to maintain this area into the future. So unfortunately, we don't have a lot of specific data for use within this area, essentially since it's become part of the NCA. A lot of it's anecdotal and just kind of circumstantial evidence and from what we've seen through various drive-throughs and things like that. But yeah, that part of the reason of having this information meeting is to hear from folks who use this area frequently and have intimate knowledge of what's going on out there to help us get an understanding of how we can do a good job of protecting it.
And John, my understanding is these are the preliminary issues that the BLM's ID team has identified or have been brought to attention through meetings with homeowners or other things. Following the end of this 30-day period, there'll be a comment report that will be developed. It will synthesize some of the issues that the public has brought forward. And then basically the BLM will identify some refined issues that will be carried forward into the EA. Yeah, that's a good synthesis of the process. Ideally, we would carry forward all of the issues brought forward by the public. If there are anything novel comes up aside from recreation, the standard recreation use considerations that we're looking at and the travel network management that we're looking at. Excellent. I wanted to break in and actually remind everyone, if anyone actually would like to provide a verbal comment, you can go ahead. If you're on Zoom, you can raise your hand using the button at the bottom of your screen. If you're the phone or participating by phone, you can go ahead and hit *9 and raise your hand. And, you know, we're having a comment period. If you don't feel comfortable providing a verbal comment during this period, you can again go ahead and visit the website that we're looking at now, and you'll be able to provide comments. And that's going to be actually one of the next pages coming up. So we'll talk about that in a second. So with that, Teresa, you want to go ahead and scroll down? I noticed that I, as the website holder, did not remove placeholder. Map needs to be replaced once finalized. So I apologize for that. It is something, there's always one imperfect thing, and you don't find it until other people are looking at it with the public. So that'll be something I'll be doing first thing tomorrow to remove that. So this is an example of that interactive map. This will allow you to go ahead and, as a member of the public, you can go ahead, toggle on various different kinds of base maps. So you can go ahead and you could change that over to aerials. If you are a local homeowner and you want to zoom in and look at how some of these roads actually relate to you, you can zoom in and out. You can see sort of the variety of roads that are being considered out there. You can see the boundaries of the La Madre Wilderness. Or quite frankly, if you're someone who actually uses this recreationally, say you're a mountain bike user, or you're someone who actually is one of these people who's staging further to the east, and then, you know, going ahead and using UTVs to come out this direction, this may something, maybe an interactive map where you can actually go in and say, oh, I see, this is the road that I actually use. I should be providing the BLM with some information on the way that I see people currently using these roads. And it could actually include a suggestion that, 50% of the traffic for the people who go ahead and stage further to the east of here at the junction of the two highways, they basically go out, they go in the southern road, they, go up under the forest and then come in on sort of the northern road. There's lots of good information that it isn't going to be clear just from tire tracks on the ground and what the BLM can say out there. So that's one of the things I know the BLM is particularly interested in as they're going ahead and looking for that. Yeah, there's another example. Probably not that many street addresses out in this area, if I had to guess. But if someone did have a street address and they were a homeowner, that's a way that they could actually find their house. Yep. Perfect. I love an example of that. And there are actually instructions on this as you scroll down underneath there. Oh, that's the centroid. Interesting. Not where I thought it would have been. Perfect. So then you can see as you scroll down a little bit. Yep, keep going. More information about, sort of specific issues. Here's some more of the frequently asked questions. Probably for those of you who are paying attention during the presentation, you already know what these are because we've explained them. These are good ones though, for if you have other folks who may be interested in commenting on this project and they didn't have the opportunity to participate in this meeting. This is a good way to frame the project, get them situated. And, really there's an interesting one at the bottom, kind of explains what the BLM plans to do with the input received during the early planning and information gathering period. And I actually touched on that a bit later, so I won't go ahead and revisit it. So let's go ahead and go to probably the most important station of all. Excellent. BLM wants your feedback. That's really the takeaway. And again, I'll use this opportunity to remind everyone who's actually here on Zoom or on the phone, you can go ahead, press the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen if you want to ask a verbal question, or *9 to raise your hand as a phone attendee. But critically, the BLM wants your feedback, and ideally they'd like it during this 30-day period that's going to go ahead and run from November 1st to December 1st. Your information really helps guide a refined and useful ramp in EA. So, you can actually provide anonymous comments. One thing I will say is that we already talked about the substantive and useful comments. And I sort of mentioned how, as an example, if someone was a user who actually knew what the uses were out there for OHVs, or someone who actually was a hiker in the area or happened to know that mountain bikes actually were using certain trails or roads in certain ways, that's really key. And it's a great substantive and useful type of comment. So as an example, that'd be something that provides new information about the proposed project, but in all likelihood, that also means that the BLM would then use that to inform some of the range of alternatives that they would actually be developing for analysis in this EA. So with that, maybe John or Josh, do you want to go ahead and just talk a little bit about the ways to comment?
Yeah, glad to, William. So like William said, you can use the project email that's highlighted on your screen right now, and a very convenient way to provide your comment. Several members of the interdisciplinary team have access to this email, and we'll all be reviewing the comments that get sent there. You can also physically mail a letter to us at the address shown just above the email address there on your screen. And a little less formal, but still acceptable would be a phone call. We would just be taking notes of the comment and documenting that in the project record as well. Or
Excellent.
tonight, you can provide your comment live tonight on air. That would be fantastic.
That was a wonderful segue. I'll remind everyone again, raise your hand, bottom of your Zoom screen with that raise your hand button. Raise your hand if you're a phone caller, *9. I will go ahead, and then I think we have productively run through the website. For those particularly who have, Erin, mentioned she was the head of, Friends of Red Rock Canyon. For those members who actually may be able to provide comments, or even other folks that aren't in your organization, pointing them over to the website's a really easy way to go ahead and actually get them a lot of information and afford them the opportunity to sort of learn more about the project, even if they weren't able to be here. Excellent. Yeah, that's the last slide there. With that, maybe I'll go ahead and suggest BLM. Are there any other questions that sort of, as we went through the website, you noticed that you wanted to go ahead and talk about a little bit more, or were there portions of the presentation you'd like to revisit and expound on a little bit more?
I think I'll just circle back to one of the reports we've heard from some of the Kyle Canyon residents regarding recreational conflict in the Harris Spring area, particularly between equestrians and OHV users. Whether the OHV use is allowed on the trails that the equestrians are using, and where appropriate places for either group to recreate might be up in this Kyle Canyon area, and particularly in the Harris Springs area. Certainly, like Josh mentioned, our RMP gives us some direction on developing an equestrian trailhead within this Harris Springs area off of Kyle Canyon Road. Depending on where equestrians prefer to recreate will dictate on which side of the road we develop that trailhead. So the more feedback we get from the equestrian community about their preferred location to ride will be very helpful in deciding where we would develop this equestrian trailhead if we do move forward with that. And to further reduce conflict, again, we are looking at designating non-motorized uses within this project area. So that would be advertised through clear signage information at the staging areas, as well as on the trails and roads themselves, marking them as either motorized or non-motorized uses only. and looking to reduce conflicts that way as well.
I actually wanted to go one level up and talk a little bit about, or ask a question to you about the RMP. What is sort of the overarching purpose of the Red Rock Canyon NCA? I know we're talking a lot about recreation, but what was the sort of NCA established for?
The NCA was established to protect and preserve natural resources within the conservation area boundary, specifically, for current use and for future generations to use as well. Part of the NCA designation does give a heavy nod towards recreation use. It's pretty widely recognized that Red Rock Canyon has a huge recreation history for as long as many people can remember, really, and continuing on to today. And that's recreation is something that we do need to focus on, but it's always in the context of protecting the natural resources, whether it's cultural resources, fish, or not fish, but wildlife, riparian systems, spring systems, things like that.
So resource management plan like that for such a broad area is necessarily broad in what it says about most portions of the NCA, and then ramps sort of are a little bit more detailed?
Exactly. So you can think of the resource management plan as the umbrella parent document that gives broad general direction regarding certain uses and conservation measures for the area. And then these recreation area management plans are more focused and directed into specific zones within the conservation area that have unique recreation interests or unique resource considerations that we need to keep in mind.
Yeah, I mean, there's a considerable diversity within the NCA, north to south, east to west, then with elevation and all sorts of other things. So
Absolutely.
No one portion of the NCA is all that similar sometimes to the other portions. So are you well, let's contrast this. What are the I sort of flew past biological resources, and actually I realized I'm not sure that we actually touched on that. At present, what are the biological resource concerns that you're actually seeing out in this area?
We know that there is a pretty significant burrow population in this area, and we also know that this is kind of a sensitive area for desert tortoise as well. Of course, migratory birds are always a concern, but presently, our knowledge of what the biological concerns are is pretty limited to just the wild horses and burros and the tortoises.
So not as many endemic species in this area as, say, near some of the springs, in other portions of the NCA?
Not that we know of.
Okay. Josh, you have any questions you'd like to answer or guidance you'd like to give? Before I go ahead and actually allow you to answer, though, I'll remind everyone you can raise your hand at the bottom of your screen, or you can go ahead. If you're participating via Zoom, you can do that. If you're on the phone, you can press *9 and go ahead and ask a verbal comment. That way, if you do not want to do that, you can visit the website, and that will explain to you how to provide a comment by mail or by email. Go ahead, John. Excuse me. Josh, I saw your face, but the name said John underneath you. I'm sorry. I know you're Josh. You're muted.
Thank you. Yeah, we're doing a lot of musical chairs here. Thank you. Yeah, I was just for those who are on the Zoom. I'll definitely offer one more chance to ask any questions, or perhaps an opportunity to leave a comment. And if we don't have any, I'm gonna because we advertise this till 8 p.m. I'm gonna keep us. We're gonna keep this live and going in case anyone decides to join us. But I'm gonna let folks go. And so I'm gonna do one more check to see if there's any more questions or any questions or comments.
Josh, it might be worth going ahead and sort of talking over this slide too, and I can do it, or you can do it. And just with a parting word to remind everyone of the ways that they can provide comments if they're leaving this meeting.
Yeah, thanks, William. So you know, before I talk about the different ideas again, I want to say that this is probably, well, that this is definitely the most important part of the planning process is obtaining public comment. And so I just want to tell everyone again, thanks for your participation and listening in tonight. I also want to ask that if you could help pass the message on that this commenting period is open, so that we can get as much public participation in this part of the process. It's critical to the BLM being able to develop a plan that not only supports our ability to put a good management plan together, but it gives us that opportunity to develop a plan that supports the demand and the needs of the public for this area. And please help us get the message out there that this commenting period is open, and that we need public input so that we can develop that plan that meets the needs. The opportunities to make that comment, or the ways to make comment, is through email, through the email address provided on this slide, by mail at the address listed also on this slide, or by visiting the Harris Springs Ramp EA through the website at the address provided at the top. And with that, I hope everyone has a wonderful evening, and we're going to go ahead and keep this open, but I want to let everyone know that we're going to go ahead and end this portion of the presentation unless someone else joins between now and 8 p.m. Thank you again.
Thank you. And I'll go ahead and, as folks, I see that both of our attendees just vanished, but I'll jump in every 5 minutes if anyone actually does join and sort of remind them that they can go ahead and provide comments. But otherwise, if we have no attendees, there's no one to actually have verbal comments. So no need for me to jump in.
Thanks, William.
The meeting has now concluded. Thank you for your attendance. Good night.